Hi, my name is Daphne Page, and I am the 20-year-old author of 6 books currently. And it's been a while since I filmed a video, so I started this channel back in February of 2024, right after I published my new adult dark paranormal portal fantasy, Return of Eve. And then I kind of made 2 videos and fell off the bandwagon, which I am definitely going to try to get back into the groove in 2025. So today I wanted to actually talk about um, growth as an indie author and how many books I've sold in 2024 compared to how many books I sold in 2023. So in 2023, I had 3 books published: The Heiress of Gaia and The Empire's Witch, which are part of the same series. So it's book 1 and book 2. And then Jess, which is a young adult thriller romance standalone. So those were all out in 2023. And then in 2024, I actually published 3 more books, which is a record for me. So The Heiress of Gaia, The Empire's Witch, The Prince of Clymora, Jess, and then Return of Eve and Banished by Darkness. So there's 2 ongoing series right now. So there's Amelia of the Solstice Realm, which is my new adult paranormal fantasy series, which is book 1, Return of Eve, and book 2 is Banished by Darkness. And then I have my middle grade young adult paranormal fantasy series, which is called Kingdoms and Curses, and that's book 1, The Heirs of Gaia, book 2, The Empire's Witch, and book 3, The Prince of Clymora. So in the total of 2023, I sold 35 books the entire year. And obviously that's not the best. It's not the worst, at least I sold books, but it's definitely not the best. I was still in high school, so I was senior year, so I was concentrating more on graduating and finishing everything up than I was on marketing. So there's a lot of reasons for why that number is so low. And I'm not mad about that. I'm giving myself grace because I had a lot going on. I graduated high school, I started college, so it makes sense that it's not the highest. And I didn't really know what I was doing on Instagram, didn't really know what I was doing on TikTok, but I've definitely figured out my little groove, my little niche that I've been doing over the past year, and it's going really well. So, yes. And according to my little spreadsheet here, because I try to keep really accurate numbers, according to this year I sold 152 books, which is a lot more than 35. So there's definitely a very drastic increase. And it definitely has something to do with me publishing 3 more books. And I had my first book signing this year. So I got some book sales there. I actually was in less local events this year than the previous year. So that I find very fascinating. But yes, I will run down the numbers of exactly which books sold what. So in 2023, I had the 3 books out: The Heirs of Gaia, The Empire's Witch, and Jess. I have kept track of how much I sold in each month and then of which books I've sold. And I know generally, I suppose, where those sales came from, whether it be an event in person, my book signing I had in September, or Amazon, or the expanded distribution, so online sales. So in 2024, I had my first book signing and I launched my signed copy website, and I've gotten quite a few sales through that. Let's look at this. We're going to go back to 2023 for a moment, and we're going to look at the 3 books I had out then. So The Heirs of Gaia sold 1 copy in January, none in February, 2 in March, 1 in April, none in May, 1 in June, none in July or August, and then 2 copies in September, 3 copies in October, nothing in November, and then 5 copies in December. That makes sense. I typically have a lot more sales in November and December, and sometimes October as well, because I have local craft shows I set up at there, and I've been doing those for as long as I've been publishing, which is now 3 years. I sold 15 copies of The Heirs of Gaia in 2023. And then The Empire's Witch, which also released in 2022. So it was available for sale all 12 months, and I only sold 5 copies in 2023. And then Jess, which released April 2023, sold 15 copies that year. So it tied with The Heirs of Gaia. This year is pretty drastic. I'm going to talk about the totals first. So The Heirs of Gaia sold 22 copies. Well, I guess it's not this year since now it's 2025. So this is 2024 numbers. The Heirs of Gaia sold 22 copies. The Empire's Witch sold 10 copies. Jess sold 27 copies. Return of Eve, which is the book that came out in February of 2024. Return of Eve sold 42 copies. And then The Prince of Clymora, which is the third book to my Kingdoms and Curses, middle grade young adult paranormal fantasy series, sold 11 copies, and it came out in July, so that's actually not bad. Banished by Darkness, which came out in September, is this book, and it is the sequel to Return of Eve. And it sold 40 copies, and it's only been out like 3 months, so that's really good. So in total, 152 copies. And then I also was participating in Stuff Your Kindle Days with my book Return of Eve, and I did 3 of them this year, or 2024. And the first one I participated in June. I got 3,959 downloads. And then the second one I participated in was in October, and I believe that went for 3 days instead of just one because they were trying something new. And I got 6,383 downloads of Return of Eve. And then my third one was at the end of December, and I got 3,954 downloads of Return of Eve. So over 14,200 downloads of Return of Eve, which is stellar. I've been seeing the shelvings on Goodreads increase, and I've been getting ratings and readings from that, and then purchases of the second from that, which is really helped my career. I would say that definitely is what pushed me up this year, along with finding exactly what I want to write. Because these books, I call this one my book from my soul, because it is actually the first book I ever wrote. I drafted the first draft when I was 12. And then my senior year of high school, I redrafted it, and it turned into this. So yeah, I call it my soul book. So yes, definitely drastic improvement. And in total, I've sold over 220 books in my lifetime of being an author, which is only 3 years. And the first 2, I didn't really know what I was doing. So my Instagram presence, or my social media presence in general, was very small. So it was mostly just local events for those 2 years. If you want, it ran down for months and how many books I sold each month. I actually have that as well. So in 2024, January, I sold nothing. I didn't sell a single book in January. And January has always been like the dry month for me. I don't typically make very many sales, if any, in January, which makes sense because it's right after Christmas, right after everyone spent a crap ton of money. And then in February, I sold 6 books. 5 of those were Return of Eve. 1 was The Heirs of Gaia. And in March, I sold 8 books. So 2 copies of The Heirs of Gaia, 2 copies of The Empire's Witch, 3 copies of Jess, and 1 copy of Return of Eve. In April, I sold 6 books, 3 copies of Jess, and 3 copies of Return of Eve. During April, since it's the month that Jess released, I believe I had a 99-cent ebook deal going on there. But I'm not sure. I think that's the end. I had that during the end of April, since it came out April 30th through the first week of May. So in May, I sold 4 copies of Jess, and that was it. And then in June, I sold 12 books, so it's getting a little better here. I sold 2 copies of The Heirs of Gaia, 2 copies of The Empire's Witch, 3 copies of Jess, and 5 copies of Return of Eve. And I believe, yes, June, I had a month-long 99-cent sale going for The Heirs of Gaia and The Empire's Witch in preparation for The Prince of Clymora coming out in July. So The Prince of Clymora was up at a discount pre-order for that month, ebook. And in July, this is the month that The Prince of Clymora released. I sold 1 copy of The Heirs of Gaia and 2 copies of Return of Eve, and then 3 copies of The Prince of Clymora. So my middle grade young adult series, I wouldn't say it is my most popular series. Clearly, since these ones have very much overtaken them. So it is always harder for me to sell. I'm going to look into that in 2025 for sure. And in August, it was a really dry month too. I only made 2 book sales in August, which was 1 The Heirs of Gaia and then 1 Return of Eve. And then in September, I had my first book signing, which was up in Forks, Washington, at the Forever Twilight in Forks Festival. So I was a featured author there alongside 5 or so other indie authors. And then also New York Times bestselling author Ali Novick, who wrote My Life with the Walter Boys. She was also there at a table right next to me. So in September, I sold 35 books, which is funny because in 1 month, I sold as many books as I sold entirely in 2023. So I thought that was pretty stellar. I heard that the average for book signings was about 20 to 25 books. So definitely not bad. Some of those came from like Amazon sales as well and website sales, but mostly it was the book signing. So I sold 7 copies of The Heirs of Gaia, 2 copies of The Empire's Witch, 4 copies of Jess, 14 copies of Return of Eve, 2 copies of The Prince of Clymora, and 6 copies of Banished by Darkness. And then in October, at the end of October, I had a book sale going on my signed copy website as well as on Amazon to celebrate my 20th birthday. So some of these are from that, but I also had some other in-person events during October. And then as well just Amazon sales. So I sold 4 copies of The Heirs of Gaia, 1 copy of The Empire's Witch, 6 copies of Jess, 6 copies of Return of Eve, 3 copies of The Prince of Clymora, and 11 copies of Banished by Darkness. So 31 books in total for October, which was my goal because I thought it'd be so cool to be like, I sold a book a day, 31 books, 31 days. So in November, I sold 8 books. So it got significantly downhill from October, but that is perfectly okay. So I sold 1 copy of The Heirs of Gaia, 1 copy of The Empire's Witch, 2 copies of Jess, 2 copies of Return of Eve, 1 copy of The Prince of Clymora, and then 1 copy of Banished by Darkness. And then in December, I sold 34 books in total, so we're back uphill again. I sold 3 The Heirs of Gaia, I sold 2 The Empire's Witch, 2 Jess, 3 Return of Eve, and then 2 The Prince of Clymora, and 22 Banished by Darkness. And I know that a lot of those Banished by Darkness orders came in during the Stuff Your Kindle Day because I was also running an ebook sale on that. So, yeah. That is my roundup for my 2024 sales as an indie author who is still trying to figure out what I'm doing. But yes, I've been having a blast figuring it out, and I've gotten into a little groove, and it's only uphill from here. So if you want to stick around, I'm going to be actively posting more on my YouTube channel, and then I have a TikTok that I've been doing pretty regularly, and then I have my Instagram that I also do very regularly. So yeah, those 3 social medias is where you can find me, and you can find any of my books on Amazon, B&N, and then my personal website for signed copies I ship throughout the United States is popcorn-publishing.com.